Hey, what's up? This is Sean.
This is Michael.
And I'm Adam.
And this is Audiophiles for Audiophiles. The name might be a little confusing to start off with. Hopefully you can see it in our title. I don't know when we're going to do that, but it's going to be Audiophiles, 2 different words, for Audiophiles 1. Is it clever? I don't know.
Yeah, it's a play on words.
Yeah, it sucks. But anyway, this podcast is basically helping people find new music.
Good music.
Stuff that's not on the radio, because, nowadays people just go straight to the radio. They're in the car or whatever. So hopefully we can help people expand their interests a little bit. That's what we're here for.
That's what it's all about.
Exposing more music to more people and trying to help you learn how to find music for yourself.
Because you're useless and you can't do anything on your own, basically, is what we're saying.
Yeah, so we're just helping you out.
Hopefully we won't be as condescending as that, but anyway.
That was pretty bad.
I can't guarantee Sean.
Yeah,
but
sorry.
We're pretty awful people, but that's what we're going for.
Ooh.
So where do you guys want to start?
Well, Sean, why don't you announce the theme of the day?
The theme of the day is what was the theme of the day?
Theme of the day is the Beatles.
Oh, the Beatles.
Basically, everyone's gonna hate us for this, but we're gonna rant about the Beatles, and
it might not
be
the
Beatles
about how we think they maybe a little overrated.
They're kind of overrated, yeah.
That's
pretty much.
That's a consensus on us 3, and we're gonna get a lot of hate for that, and it's obviously probably one of the worst decisions for the first podcast, because now everyone's going to immediately stop listening to us.
No, I mean, I like the Beatles, but I mean, there's some things about the Beatles that I kind of don't agree with. And Adam?
Yeah,
Adam's got a good
opinion. I
opinion.
don't know. I just think like they're definitely blown a little bit out of proportion, right? Like
Definitely.
Everyone makes them feel like they've completely changed how people listen to music, and I don't think that's necessarily true.
People make them seem like they're the most boundary pushing human beings on the face of the earth, and they kind of weren't, because there were other bands, other artists and groups that were pushing boundaries.
Before we get too deep into the Beatles hate, we don't hate them. I just want to say, first of all 3 of us think the Beatles are a great band. They obviously did a lot of great things, but I mean, there's a few finer points that we want to smooth out here.
Right. It's not saying that the Beatles are bad in any way. It's just saying that they're not necessarily as fantastic as people want to make them out to be.
Right.
I mean, just some of the things like Sean was going on about pushing boundaries, and like the Beatles definitely did push certain boundaries, and they pushed, music marketing many ways. Like they were one of the first to be able, to market themselves and be that, English crossover into America.
Right.
That paved the way for a lot of bands, and that's true.
Yep.
But musically, that doesn't necessarily make them a better band than some of the other contemporary British bands like the Rolling Stones or the Who.
And we're talking about musically too. We're not talking about their appearance and their hairstyles and things like that. We're talking about
spot on with
they're spot on. They have their own hairstyles. They have their own we're gonna give them that.
They're definitely a cultural phenomenon.
Yeah, cultural phenomenon.
No
pop
one can
culture.
deny that they've already been made out to be one of the greatest bands ever.
Yeah.
Almost anyone you could ask them that, and they'll say, "Sure, the Beatles were the greatest band ever." And I mean,
but musically,
they don't even listen to the Beatles. They could say that.
It's a broad sweeping statement.
So it's pretty huge.
That's what we're getting at here, but
I mean, it's some of the things, some of the little things, like the Beatles' name, honestly, is not a very good name. If you break it down,
describe it, Adam.
It's not really good.
It.
I mean, basically, it's just 2 really bad puns, right? So the idea for the Beatles, like this bug themed, is from Buddy Holliday's band, the Crickets, and they used to listen to them, and they thought it would be funny to parody that, and then they decided to change it and make a play on words with the BEET from the insect,
this year
and change
blew
it
my
to
mind.
the BEAT, like the musical beat. And
that idea right there blew my mind, because we were talking about this 2 weeks ago, having this conversation about the Beatles. I never once made that connection between the beat being, I knew it was spelled differently than the insect, but I never thought, a beat like in music. I didn't realize it was that kind of a pun, and that...
they got you.
I know, melted my brain for a second. I felt really dumb, but...
Who would have known?
But yeah, in all honesty, it might sound nitpicky, sure, but, a band's name is a lot of their identity. And, forming your entire band off of just 2 bad puns seems a little...
It's good British humor.
I don't know. I don't hate them for that.
I don't hate them for that.
No.
It's strange.
I actually think it's hilarious. I kind of love the name. the more I think about it, I think a name based on a pun is hilarious. There's Adam's sister right there. She's quietly running down the stairs, and we're making fun of her. For
give a shout out, Rachel. Give a shout out.
Guys.
That's Rachel.
Yeah, Rachel.
Hi.
Woo!
First appearance. We might ask her later for a song suggestion. Who knows?
We'll get a guest appearance on.
But that's our podcast. We're sitting in Adam's basement currently, so
it's very cozy.
It's cozy down here. Hopefully the acoustics aren't bad. I don't know.
We'll see.
But yeah, that's fun.
But yeah, I mean, going back to the Beatles and everything, like we were talking about stuff like having like boundary pushing guitarists and like guitarists who kind of transformed the instrument. And John Lennon, George Harrison, definitely great, fantastic songwriters, but they certainly did not push the instrument nearly as far as many of their contemporaries.
I agree.
The way that people like Eric Clapton, Pete Townsend, and Jimi Hendrix were playing the guitar right around the same time. You can't really hold John Lennon or George Harrison up to any of those.
No, because people at the time in the mid to late '60s, they literally watched artists like Jimi Hendrix and Pete Townsend reinvent the guitar, just the way they played and like their style and everything, and the instrument destruction and all that great stuff. Like no one really thought about doing those kind of things to the guitar. So when I hear people call George Harrison one of the greatest guitarists of all time, and I kind of think it kind of bothers me a little bit because he didn't really push. He didn't push the instrument to the boundaries.
He was good at what he did for the Beatles, but I mean,
he didn't
that was the Beatles. He didn't.
He didn't do anything really crazy.
And that's the thing. So it's not that like a guitar necessarily makes the entire band.
No.
But the Beatles' strong point was songwriting, and attributing like guitar work to them when they don't really deserve that is a bit unfair to a lot of.
That is very unfair, yeah. But I mean, we're not saying that guitarists like Pete Townsend and Jimi Hendrix, amazing guitar players. We're not saying that those guys don't get credit for what they did, because they surely do. Mm-hmm. But we're just saying that, like John Lennon, George Harrison, people like that, they don't. They get too much praise when they really didn't go as far as these other guitar players. So I mean, everyone gets their praise, but I feel like George Harrison gets it's kind of
a little more than is necessarily due.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. A lot of the stuff like. Introducing all this new instrumentals and this whole Indian influence. Well,
bringing all those weird ass
like the sitar.
The sitar.
I was reading a biography on Led Zeppelin. It was talking about how Jimmy Page was really the first out of that London circle, that British circle, to go to India and bring back a sitar and play it in those areas. And through his musical connections, he was around the Beatles and the Stones and everyone. And the Beatles picked up on that, and they, a lot of people attribute them to bringing in this Indian influence and this mysticism and all of these more Eastern beats and stuff, when there were definitely other artists that were experimenting with that and brought it over for the Beatles to use. And then the Beatles took it and created their own music with it, and pushed it themselves in different directions. But it's not necessarily that they actually started that sort of mini revolution, if you want to call it.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know, you guys have anything else to add about the Beatles in particular? Or should we move on to
well, I mean, we can
not really.
Yeah, I mean, that's our good mini rant
for the rant.
Mini rant.
Semi-prepared. We've talked about this before. So.
Yeah. And I mean, James, I don't know if we want to. We can, we were talking about those guitarists earlier. Eric Clapton was in a band that, was well known at the time, but has kind of fallen out of the public spectrum at this time. The Yardbirds,
right?
And they're absolutely fantastic band.
Yeah.
Everything about them. They started off trying to be really bluesy, moved more to prog rock, and then eventually became really poppy, especially to the end of their career.
Yeah. Lots of different phases going on here.
They were contemporary.
Yeah, they were contemporary. Their first album came out in, 64?
Yeah.
63, 64, around that.
They formed around 63, I think, so Beatles were 1960. I mean, they were at the same time, but...
Yeah, and I mean, the Yardbirds spawned 3 absolutely fantastic guitarists that, pushed the guitar in 3 different directions into almost 3 different genres of music. Eric Clapton with his increasingly bluesy guitar.
Oh, it's so bluesy.
Then after Eric left, then guitar passed on to Jeff Beck, who
Beck.
is another lesser-known guitarist, but he definitely pushed some bluesy stuff, more in the prog rock stuff.
Yeah,
and then
get experimental.
Get really experimental, and then Jimmy Page took over with Jeff Beck, and then after Jeff Beck, he actually came in on the bass. Not many people know that. He started off as the bass player for the Yardbirds, and then moved up to guitar.
Wow.
Awesome.
And then
learning things every day.
But then, Jimmy Page was only with them for 9 or 10 months or something.
Yeah,
but then took the Yardbirds, created the new Yardbirds, which included the likes of Robert Plant, John Bonham, and John Paul Jones.
Right.
Who later become Led Zeppelin.
Yeah,
Sure
I mean,
we all know where Zeppelin went.
What hasn't been said about Led Zeppelin?
Yeah.
I mean,
so basically, what you're saying is the Yardbirds may have given birth to more musically talented artists. Eventually, even though the Beatles were talented songwriting wise, just musically as far as the instruments, the guitarists that came out of the Yardbirds, much
way more things going on.
Way
more
unique.
things going on.
Yeah,
more unique.
More unique, and definitely pushed more guitar boundaries. So
right.
One of their more famous songs, which is very fantastic and moves towards the poppy stuff, has lots of the vocal harmonies and a lot of the time changes and all sorts of stuff that seem very iconic Beatles. The Yardbirds were doing very contemporary. It's hard to say chicken the egg who came up with what first, and it's not necessarily that they took it, that either one took it from each other, but there was just musical collaboration going on at the same time, and that the Yardbirds were certainly capable of doing all of the same things and more that the Beatles could do. And so the song For Your Love is an absolutely phenomenal Yardbird song, and just an absolutely phenomenal song.
Gotta check it out.
We'll cue that one up for you here once we'll edit that in. I mean, this podcast, we're going straight through. We're not editing anything we're saying, but we're going to edit in the songs later, so we'll give you a listen to that here right now.
For your love, for your love, for your love,
I'd give you everything and more, and that's for sure.
for your love,
I'd bring you diamond rings and things right to your door
for your love,
to thrill you with delight. I'd give you diamonds bright. There'll be days that will excite and make you dream of me at night.
for your love, for your
For your love, I would give the stars above. For your love, I would give you all I could.
For your love, for your love, for your love,
I'd give the moon if it were mine to give.
for your love,
I'd give the stars and the sun for I live.
for your love,
To thrill you with delight, I'd give you diamonds bright. There'll be days that will excite, make you dream of me at night.
for your love, for your love, for your
All right, so that was For Your Love by the Yardbirds. Again, absolutely phenomenal, with the guitarists like Eric Clapton, Jeff Beck, and Jimmy Page. Actually, Eric Clapton,
pretty rockin'.
with the Yardbirds, is in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame with 3 separate bands. the Yardbirds, and then his next band, Cream, and then finally his solo stuff.
Wait, that's pretty amazing.
That's pretty epic.
Absolutely phenomenal. None of
that guy's got some bragging rights.
None of the Beatles were in there 3 times.
Yeah.
But anyway, so
Yeah.
looking more into newer stuff that's like kind of taken from these Beatles influences, because if you talk to almost any band, they'll say one of their influences is undoubtedly the Beatles. Nearly every rock band that comes out of the last 40 years
the
has
Beatles
said
are just-
that.
If you
They're
just
so
happen to talk
essential.
to if you happen to talk to a rock band who say they're not influenced by the Beatles in some way,
They're lying.
yeah, they're lying. Exactly.
Definitely.
They're
But
lying sack of poop.
you know, one that has really taken like that Beatles groove to heart and like done this very pop rock thing that has kind of gone unnoticed, but is definitely a very interesting style of music. Is a band called Loxley. They're out of Wisconsin. They started in like 2005 or 2006, and
Gotta love
they
that Loxley.
they do
Loxley action.
They have a lot of good harmonies. Not so much in the time changes like the Beatles, but their guitarists definitely do a very similar thing to George Harrison and John Lennon.
Right.
Oh yeah.
And
Oh yeah.
the thing that they do different though is they definitely amp up the guitars. They're much more distorted, have more pop rocky feel, and
Yep.
It's
they're
like if the Beatles were
definitely-
around today, I feel like.
yeah, it's definitely like if the Beatles were around today, and
Yep.
you know, even more so, one of the 2 singers, because just like the Beatles, they had 2 singers, 2 guitarists. One of them has a very distinctly John Lennon sound. So anyway, here's a song by Loxley just to help you
Give you a feel
give
for
you a
that
feel
band.
for what they're like.
I remember the moment when I fell in love. And every evening I just can't get enough. Right from the start, I knew it was true. Girl, I want you, I need you, love you do. I want you, I need you, love you do. Now all of these days were so far apart, but I know that you worry, 'cause that's how you are. But darling, remember, I will always be true. 'Cause I want you, I need you, love you do. I want you, I need you, love you do. So you see, you'll never be alone. Got this feeling I just can't let go. If you leave me, oh, would I be blue? 'Cause I want you, I need you, love you do. I want you, I need you, love you Want you, need you, love you. Want you, need you.
So that was Loxley there. So I hope you enjoyed that. I think they're a great band.
Yep.
Anything
Very
else
good.
to add about them, Adam?
Um,
Since you're the one who brought them up. You're
Yes,
kind of,
Adam is the
you're
Loxley.
kind of running this podcast. He's the
He knows a lot of
Beatles
music, so-
expert
Yeah.
about bands that sound
Uh,
like them. So.
Yeah, definitely my musical tastes. They're very broad, but
Yeah.
they focus more on like the 60s and 70s
Yeah, so
stuff.
Adam brought in the
Um,
Yardbirds. I like them. I need to actually listen to them more. I feel like, but they're a great band.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, like, again, Loxley, a new band that's coming out. You should definitely check out more of their stuff. I know they have one album up on Spotify. But yeah, they're one band that I've been listening to a lot recently. But you know,
Mhm.
I think one of the things we're gonna do on the show is just kind of talk about bands that we've been listening to and
Oh, yeah.
what's been interesting us, because you know everybody when they're listening to
Yeah.
music, I feel if they're kind of exploring their own stuff, they kind of ebb and flow with all these different genres and all
Yeah.
these different bands and get really into one thing and then move to the next.
And that's especially prevalent in all three of us, because all three of us have very broad taste in music, and I think that's one of our main goals here is just to introduce new music to you. So, so what have you been listening to recently, Adam? Anything new?
Well,
Besides Loxley,
quite
of
a
course.
lot. Besides Loxley, yeah, I've been listening to. I've been on both ends of the century basically. I've been listening to a lot from just coming out the last couple of years, like bands like Fits and the Tantrums, and I mean, who are very Motowny indie.
Sean's pulling the chair back up here. So, yeah.
Of course. He needs to get his adrenaline spinning
comfortable
around in a
seat.
spinny chair.
Yep.
But no.
It's a feel professional.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, continue.
Yeah, Fits in the Tantrums, who are
Oh, yeah.
an indie kind of Motowny feel. They don't
Yeah.
have any guitarists, which is interesting. It's keyboards, bass, drums, saxophone, trumpet, and 2 singers. And it's got a very, very different feel. They're really interesting to check out. But I've been listening to a lot of them, and also going way back to like the Delta Blues. I'm
That's some
listening to
good
a lot of guys like Sunhouse, Layton Hopkins, and Robert Johnson, of course. All those guys. There's something about their recordings that are just so raw. And so
I love that raw
it's,
sound.
It's
I
just
feel like
Yeah, it's
today,
very good.
I mean,
yeah.
I know you're talking about.
I feel like it's very spontaneous. It's very
Yeah. You've been talking about different.
It's not overproduced
trying to
or
bring like
anything.
a new blues sound into today's music, and like the Black Keys, who have kind of done that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, there's not many other bands besides them though that have been doing that. In
yeah, it's
recent
basically
days.
been the Black Keys and the White Stripes who have been pushing that sort of like raw, emotional, blues-driven music, but they both ended up moving a little bit away from
Yeah,
that.
if you
That's
listen
probably-
to newer Black Keys, they you
Yeah.
know they add in everything else and make it sounds much more produced now. But,
Yeah.
I mean, still great music.
I
but-
agree with you. Yeah.
But if you go back
Yeah.
to like the older Black Keys albums, they're definitely much more raw sounding.
Yeah, and I mean, there's something so unique about just a man sitting there with his guitar, one microphone, one take.
I
Yeah.
agree.
No
on
studio
every
tricks
single song.
or
Like
any
the
of that
studio
stuff.
was basically
Is-
what we're
yeah.
doing now.
As much
It's
as
just
I love that, there's just something about that raw sound that you can't.
Just someone's
Yeah.
basement, just
It's-
unrehearsed.
It's almost impossible to imitate unless you do the exact same thing. Unless you just sit there with one microphone, kind of like what we're doing now,
Yeah.
and just go through one take and just cut, print,
yeah.
produce. You
Well,
know?
the reason why that's so great is because it's a whole resurgence of your creativity, just like what you can come up with off the cuff, and
Oh my gosh, I love.
you're not
that.
writing
Yeah.
anything down. You're just kind of just playing, you're just kind of improvising, just playing with like what you feel, and that's a great trait to have if you're a musician, especially because we're all musicians here. So it's great, like to record that so raw. It's
Yeah.
just, like
Any
what
kind
Adam
of-
said, it's a great feeling. It's a great
Anything like that, any kind of improvised thing, like
yeah.
a lot of what I've been listening to lately ends up being in the jazz area because
Jazz is great.
I worked like this internship this summer, and I'm just sitting at a desk. They let us listen to our iPods when we're sitting
Podcasts.
there, so podcasts too. But anyway, I'm mostly just listening to whatever. I didn't want to listen to anything that would really distract me, so I usually just put on some jazz in the background. And I found these jazz podcasts on iTunes that it would just play an hour block of jazz from some radio show, and I would listen to that, and I love that stuff.
Yes.
Really got into it lately. Loving the jazz because of just how unique and interesting it sounds, because it's just jumping around, it's all over the place, improvised, like you hardly know what's going on, but at the same time it's so musical and so like it's so cohesive as much as it's
Yes.
varied and
Definitely, I agree.
very tempo time changes, like it's
It takes so many fantastic musicians to make
Yeah.
good jazz music.
and to
Oh,
be
yeah.
able to just do that on stage flawlessly, like
Yeah.
that just blows my mind.
Very technical.
And like the thing about jazz is like it doesn't necessarily. I mean, flawlessly it feels flawless, but the beautiful thing about jazz is it embraces the flaws. Every performance is very
Right,
very
right,
unique and
right.
very different, and that's like
Exactly.
that's what makes jazz so appealing.
Right, and one of the bands I found, they're called Return to Forever. They're from like the 70s. They're like jazz fusion is really, that's one of my favorite jazz because it's like mixes rock and jazz. So it's like you got guitars, electric, you know, the whole setup, and
Yep.
you got saxophones, whatever, any kind of jazz sound all at once. It's just all going on. So Return to Forever is one of the things I've been listening to lately that I think is amazing.
Actually, you listened to Hugh Laurie's last blues album, right?
Yes,
He's
Hugh
got a
Laurie.
new one coming out. It's much jazzier.
I've heard, yeah. I haven't
Didn't It
listened
Rain?
to it, but
It's
I heard it
worth
came out.
Yeah, listen to
Right, Hugh Laurie, the guy who plays House.
yeah.
And
That's awesome.
His
I
first
know.
album
I love it.
went triple platinum in the UK and sold over 1 million copies worldwide. For
Incredible.
That's
yeah,
pretty
for
awesome.
for the highest paid actor in a television drama at one point in time.
That's hilarious. I think that's amazing.
Yeah,
It's
it really
And
is.
it's really good too. Like,
Oh.
any of those scenes on the show House too, where he's playing piano, that's him like playing. Like, he's just
Yeah.
that talented.
He plays piano.
man.
He does some of the guitars. A lot of the ones on his first album are covers of like
Yeah,
kind of blues
many
standards and
blues
stuff.
covers,
The
yeah.
second album, he's got more originals and
More
everything,
originals, okay.
but still quite a lot of the blues standards.
I'm
and
excited.
stuff.
I want to listen.
Yeah,
to that.
and he does all the piano, he does all the vocals, but he has a lot of really big name guest musicians that come in and do a lot of the tracks. They're fantastic to listen to. If you like that sort of thing, I would highly suggest listening to it.
Yeah,
I
agree.
But Sean, I know, has been listening to
I
not
have.
necessarily jazz recently.
Yeah, there's a lot of jazz talk going around, but no, I've been listening to this band. It's a super group. It's a trio. It's a trio super group. It's called the Winery Dogs. Maybe if you've heard of them. They
I've
have
heard of
one
them.
album. It's a debut, self-titled album. It features Mike Portnoy on drums, and Mike Portnoy has a incredible resume
What
of
band
bands.
is this? Is this 16 or 17 or something for Mike Portnoy? He's
Oh,
got
this
so
is
many
this is
bands.
like
He's all over with
yeah,
the
yeah.
side
He's
projects
everywhere.
and-
He's everywhere. Yep. But yeah,
So he's of Dream Theater fame, and
Yeah,
and then
lots
moved
of,
on
like
to,
Sean's shirt actually.
Yeah,
He's
I
got
have a Scenes from Memory shirt
Dream
on.
Theater.
but no, he's got an incredible resume. Everyone knows Mike Portnoy. He's one of the most prolific drummers out there, and a bass player called Billy Sheenan. He's got a great playing style. He's a incredible virtuosic bass player. And there's this one guitar player called Richie Kotzen, and he's what has Richie Kotzen been in? Does anybody know? Is this
I
like
didn't
his-
actually hear of him until the Winery
Yeah,
Dogs.
same
Until
here.
the Winery Dogs.
He just-
I was just
yeah.
really impressed with the guitar and the vocals at the same time, what he's doing, and how
Yeah,
much
he's
he
very
sounds like
good.
Chris
He's-
Cornell
Yeah.
from Soundgarden
Yeah.
and Audioslave. Like,
Yeah.
he sounds just like Chris
Cornell? Yeah,
Maybe
but,
he's just Chris Cornell with a wig.
I thought
maybe
he was
maybe
for a second,
yeah. He's got a good beard
but
though.
I mean, doesn't take anything
But yeah,
away
but
from
musically,
him.
yeah,
That's great.
these three guys, it's a incredible band. Go check out the Winery Dogs self-titled album. It's got it's kind of raw, like Black Keys kind of style. Like, it's definitely sounds like Soundgarden.
Mhm.
I mean, there's definitely lots of progressive elements though, like lots of Rush influences, but it's really
Yeah.
heavy too. Like,
Yeah.
it gets really experimental. It's like Rush, Soundgarden, maybe a little bit of Dream Theater, like some
Yeah,
Deep Purple
but
in there.
still-
Like, it's experimental, it's heavy, it's really melodic, it's lots of great melodies, great drumming, like great playing all around. Like, it's an incredible album. Definitely go check it out.
Yeah, it's hard to
garage
find. It's
in
hard to
there.
find nowadays
Winery Dogs,
that
man.
a lot of true experimentation with the instruments that people
Yeah.
have.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, like there's
Yeah.
experimentation with how things are produced, and especially like with vocals, and I mean, of course, like dubstep and stuff is very
Yeah.
experimental.
Well, the problem
but
with
techno,
Skrillex.
problem
but-
with the experimental stuff is it's just not the stuff that hits mainstream. Like, of course, there's millions of bands
Oh,
out there that
I
do
mean, obvious.
progressive
Yeah.
stuff and the
Yeah.
experimental
It's a
stuff.
very broad genre of music.
Yeah,
I
it's
feel.
just it's not the kind of stuff they want to play on the radio because it's not something someone can sit and listen to once and say, "Oh, that's super catchy. I want to listen to it again." Like, it's an
Yeah.
11-minute song that you got to sit down and really take your time with to enjoy. And that's the kind of music listening I do. I just sit down and savor it.
I was so pissed today. I was on hold at this computer store, Micro Centers, for a half hour, and the entire time their
struggle.
hold music was just top 40s and Nickelback.
Oh,
The
you
entire
say-
time I was ready.
I love how you say top 40s
I was just
and Nickelback.
ready.
Well,
to
what
just
kind of
jump out
songs?
my
What kind of
window.
songs did you hear?
There was definitely
What kind of genres were you
Oh, no.
feeling?
it was top 40.
Just top 40?
It was just like straight from the radio, basically.
Oh,
like,
that's terrible. How
you
many
know.
times did you hear Mirrors? It was like Mirrors on repeat.
no,
Oh,
unfortunately.
What's
that-
that song,
It did play
Blurred
once.
Lines?
It did play once, but
Oh, God, I hate
yeah.
all those songs.
But no,
Yeah.
the very first song was Nickelback. It was like
Oh.
"Today Was Your Last Day" or whatever, and I was
And you're like, it might be my
might
last
be, it
day.
might be.
They're
Oh my
torturing you.
Horrible.
God, it was awful.
That's great marketing right
That's
there.
horrible. Yeah,
Not
but
really.
that's funny. The thing with hold songs, because like when I was
should've
calling
played the Winery
people
Dogs.
at work, I'd be put on hold a lot of times, and
The struggle's real.
mostly I just got elevator music for their hold music, and like just like really
Nice.
smooth jazz maybe, and I'm just like, yeah, that's cool. I'll just
Hey,
I'll
I
sit
love
here.
smooth jazz.
I jammed to it for a minute or two until they talked to me again, but I was interested what our hold music was. I was gonna ask someone to put me on hold on our phone system just to see what our hold music was, and I forgot
check
to
it
do
out.
that.
That's okay. You
Gotta
can
check
always
it
just
out.
call back up there.
I'll call him today.
Just
I'll
keep
see what it
calling.
is.
But yeah, so I think that's pretty much all we've got for right now.
That's it.
Yeah.
We
So
suck. Just kidding.
this has been our vaguely Beatles themed
Definitely check out those bands, though.
podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Check out the
I mean,
fans.
We're still feeling around in the podcast environment here.
Yeah, but
First episode.
it's a very, I'd say a very
great.
successful first shot. Anyway, yeah. So feel free, experiment with all sorts of music. I mean, take what we've been talking about as
we
like
need
a jumping point.
We need a sexy segue out of this
Sexy
podcast.
segue.
Oh.
Well, I'd say Sean could just
A tagline.
dance, but
Yeah, but you can't see
can't
that.
see
No one.
it.
I don't think anyone wants to see
No,
that.
just something like, come back.
Yeah,
and
but
listen
no.
to us.
I think we're gonna close out of this segment with the lead single from the Winery Dogs debut album. It is a song called "Elevate." It's like I said, it's the lead single.
Sean's
It's
just
a very
dictating
great
this now.
song. It's got a lot of it's actually got like a Zeppelin kind of thing to it. It's like kind
Gotta
of
love the Zeppelin.
it's lots of Zeppelin. Like it's kind of got like a Black Dog kind of like really heavy. It's really guitar driven. Lots of guitar, but it has this insane bass breakdown and with just bass and drums, and it's a hell of a song. And we're just gonna close with that. So I hope you enjoy that. My name is Sean. If you haven't picked that up already,
I'm Michael.
And I'm Adam, and this is Audiophiles for Audiophiles.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah.